Days. I'm Mandy Gunasekara filling in for Gerard. We're so glad that you have joined us. We're here live in the Element Wealth studio. If you're thinking about or planning for retirement, do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. All right, I'm so excited. I actually announced the order incorrectly earlier, but this is a wonderful surprise that you're coming in early. We've got Lars Larson, host of the Lars Larson Show, who is joining us now. Welcome.
Good morning, Mandy. How's life treating you in Mississippi?
Life in Mississippi is great. It is much better than life in Washington, D.C., but probably not as great as life over at West Palm Beach, Florida right now. That has truly become the center of the political universe and the global universe, I'd say.
Isn't it fantastic that we've got a brand new president who's going to start to put out all the fires started by the soon-to-be previous president, Joe Biden, and that he's moving at lightning speed, even when you compare him to Trump 1.0 back in 2017. Donald Trump is moving at lightning speed. He seems to know where all the bodies are buried, number one, and how to make the gears and levers of the federal government do what he needs it to do to serve the American public.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, he means business this time, and you're seeing this with how fast he has been announcing the appointment of key positions. I want your take on that, and also the reaction from some global leaders for some ongoing issues the Biden administration has struggled to deal with. You had Qatar saying they were going to kick out Hamas leadership, giving a nod towards maybe peace in the Middle East can be restored. I have full faith that that's actually going to happen, especially with the ambassador to Israel that they just announced, Mike Huckabee. So I'm excited on that front. And you also have a willingness of conversation, and the conversation around the Ukraine-Russia conflict, that is already starting to change. So he's had such a big impact. He means business. But back to the announced appointments, who are you most excited about and or surprised about today?
I'm kind of surprised by the Matt Gaetz pick because, as I understand it, it was a last-minute pick. He was not on the first list that President Trump considered, and I know it's going to be a bit of a distraction because I don't know how much your audience knows about the background of Matt Gaetz. Congressman Gaetz is on my show from time to time. I mean, we're not best buddies or anything like that, but there are questions that are going to be raised because there was due to be a House Ethics Committee investigation report released tomorrow. Because Gaetz immediately submitted his resignation from the House, that won't happen. So the House Ethics Committee investigation report will not be released. That has to do with allegations that the congressman engaged in sex with underage girls, children. Late teenage children, but children all the same. And these allegations have been around for years. They were investigated by the Biden DOJ, and one measure of whether or not they're valid is the Biden DOJ looked at it and decided not to bring charges against Congressman Gaetz. I think they would have charged him if they thought they had enough evidence to make the charges stick, and they did not. Merrick Garland is as political as the day is long, so I think they would have gone after him. So do I think there's an indication that the charges are untrue? Yeah, I do. But do I think this could be a distraction? Yes, I do. I also think that Congressman Gaetz is a real stalwart when it comes to Donald Trump and a stalwart when it comes to, going after issues very, very forcefully. And as you pointed out, a lot of good things have started to happen immediately. And you've pointed out a couple of them. We've already seen a conversation on the phone between President-elect Trump and Elon Musk and Zelensky in Ukraine. And if you couldn't tell my feelings about Ukraine, I think this whole thing has been a big, bad mistake from the word go. It wouldn't have happened, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, if Donald Trump had been president. And do I think Trump won the 2020 election? We can talk about that as well, because we got some new evidence in last week's election that the 2020 election was fraudulent. But I'll go where you want me to go, Mandy. It's your show.
Yeah, no, I would actually love to get into that because but as you were getting on, I was checking out what's trending on your website. It's larslaron.com for any of our listeners. And one of the stories that I think is rightfully trending, I've been having significant conversations with people, is that the issue of election integrity, just because we won. This is still an issue that needs to be focused on and addressed, and there's a map that's been making its way around that shows the states Trump won versus the ones that Kamala won. And the ones that Kamala won consistently across the board are the ones that do not require voter ID. But there's additional evidence, Lars. I won't steal your thunder. Tell our listeners, what is it that's so blatantly obvious and out there that indicates fraud in the 2020 election that we shouldn't just forget and move on because it's uncomfortable to talk about? We need to embrace it and figure it out going forward.
The people who listen to SuperTalk Mississippi, God bless them, they can do their own detective work if they want to. You go back and you take a look at, you can look at the elections going back 2020, 2016, and 2012. You can even go to 2008 if you want to. Take a look at the total vote numbers for Barack Obama versus John McCain, Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney, and then Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. And when you look at those, you see numbers, and you don't have the numbers in front of you, and I don't have them in front of me, but they were trending along at about 69 million votes for one, and a little less than that for the other, about almost 70 million. So all of a sudden, in 2020, the vote total number on both sides goes up gigantically, but for Joe Biden, it goes up stratospherically because, for instance, whether I liked his policies or not, Barack Obama was very popular among Democrats, and he drew a gigantic vote in 2008 when he was first elected, a somewhat smaller vote, but still a winning number in 2012. And then all of a sudden, Joe Biden gets 12 million votes more than the sainted Barack Hussein Obama.
Unbelievable.
How likely does that seem? We all pointed that out at the time to say, where did all these votes come from? And then when you look at 2024, and you say, all of a sudden about 12 to 15 million votes disappeared. They disappeared from both Donald Trump and from Kamala Harris. And you say, how is it that Joe Biden, we were asking for the last 4 years, how is it that Joe Biden outdid Barack Obama in drawing in a record number of votes? Now, people said, well, it was the pandemic year. It was November of the pandemic year. And we had a lot of vote by mail and absentee voting. And I think a lot of fraudulent votes were included in the vote total. But how is it that all those votes were there for 2020 with an old man running from his basement who had been a lifer in government and hadn't produced much of anything as a senator or as a vice president, but he draws this gigantic response from voters. And then when Kamala Harris comes along, again, I don't like her policies. I don't like the way she got into politics. We could talk about that too, if you really want to go down that road, because it's ugly. But all of a sudden, she doesn't get those votes. And she is the first Black female nominee of a major American political party. On paper, that should draw people out. I don't vote for people based on what's between their legs or the color of their skin. I vote for what's between their ears. But There are Democrats who say, I'm excited to vote for a woman. Well, apparently that excitement did not turn into drawing the record number of votes that Joe Biden drew. So it might lead you to believe, if you looked at those numbers, you say all of a sudden this outlier, right there on the chart.
Yeah.
Where did all those votes come from? Because they were trending along here. You have growth in population. That makes sense. You have growth in voter registration because of motor voter and a bunch of other factors. And then all of a sudden, all those votes disappear. And if you say, well, Trump got more votes too, if you're going to cheat, you can't just give Joe Biden 81 million votes and put Donald Trump back down at about 72, because that draws too much attention. So votes were added. And then all of a sudden in 2024, what arguably should have been a really spectacular race, because you had all the controversy over Joe Biden being kicked to the curb. Kamala Harris had $1 billion to spend. And as usual with Democrats, she overspent her budget by about 20 million. And Donald Trump, of course, is a lightning rod. If anything, draws people to the polls, not just conservatives like me. I voted for Trump every single time. and I believe in him. I think he's a great president, the best president of the 21st century. But arguably, this should have been a hot race. It was not a hot race because all those votes disappeared, which makes one believe, and I believe it, those votes weren't real. They were phantom votes that were inserted to make a win for a pathetic candidate running from his basement. Now, I know I rattle off at the mouth, Mandy. You just have to rope me in.
I love it. I love it, Lars. That's why we love having you on, and we love listening to your show as well. But it's just to put a very clear point. That's 12 million votes, extra votes between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And so it just, in my opinion, they were ballots. They were not votes. I was on the ground in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, part of Lawyers for Trump in 2020. We saw the shenanigans firsthand going on. We couldn't quite put our finger on it, but we have a better sense of it now. And now we have overwhelming, clear, and convincing evidence. All right, Lars, we're going to have to take a quick break. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we appreciate your time. For our listeners, we've got to take a quick break, but we've got more to walk through the latest appointees and what is going on, the center of the political universe from Palm Beach, Florida, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.